All right. It seems like we're going to be a little light today, but if we are ready, we could get started. See, if you don't mind signing into the document, that way everybody knows who all was here. And yeah, we can get going. All right, so the only thing that I guess coming from my side is the release that we did yesterday, or sorry, last week for pack. So we released pack 021-0. There was an issue. Interesting. Okay, sorry, got a notification. All right, so there was an issue.
Hello?
Yes, can you hear us or hear me? Seems like we have some technical difficulties. All right, waiting for Ujwal. All right, not sure if he'll be able to make it back in. So as I was saying, we did have a bug in 021-0. And then basically we released a patch for that in 021-1. I believe that was late Friday or Saturday morning, but nonetheless, it seems like all the issues revolving that were addressed. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it there. If I'm not mistaken, other people are in other rooms since we've transitioned over as well. All right, can you hear me now, Ujwal?
Hello, am I audible?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can hear you.
Awesome. All right. So yeah, I just went through the release planning. I was noticing that it seems like other people might be in the previous room. So I'm not entirely sure how to get them over since Sam already posted the change in room. Let me see if I can maybe ping. Seems like Juan is in the other. While we wait, or basically not to prolong this meeting, Ujwal, did you have any status updates?
Yeah, regarding the previous image flag, I made the changes for the analyzer and removed the exporting ops, lifecycle ops, and implemented it like you mentioned with adding some getters. So nothing is exported now, and all checks are passing.
Awesome, cool. So, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so if it's good, then we can go ahead and discuss documenting it.
Right. Cool. Yeah. As far as I'm aware, last I recall, this isn't like a pressing issue, right? As far as the previous image goes. So if I'm not mistaken, and unless you have other opinions, it's going to be released on the next release cadence. So it'll be about a month or so. Obviously, let me know if you have opinions there.
Yeah, I don't mind releasing it later. I think we should just document it so that in case anyone uses it, they should know that it's an upcoming feature and what the current functionality is for.
Yes, I completely agree. Awesome, cool. Let's see. So I think while both of you were out, I mentioned the status update on the release for pack 021.1. We did have to do a patch release to revert a change for environment variables. But since that patch, I don't think there's been any further reports. Cool. All right. See any other status updates or release announcements for platform?
I didn't have anything.
Cool. Terrence, are you going to be promoted to maintainer of the platform since you're here most of the time, as opposed to Steven?
Steven, I don't know. I was gonna ask that question in one of the leadership meetings, especially in the light of what we want to do with Emily going on sabbatical stuff. I feel like all that it's worth probably revisiting, relooking at all those things.
Right. Okay, cool. Yeah, I totally agree. I have no real opinion as of yet, but it does make sense to reevaluate how it's currently structured. All right, if we move on to the next thing on the agenda, also, by the way, please feel free to add anything to the agenda that you think we might or should be discussing. But we have no issues that need discussion. And after that, RFCs that are relevant to platform also seems to be empty.
Really light schedule this time.
It is very light schedule. I have something, since we don't have a lot, I was just curious to hear what you all have seen, if anything, from the Docker desktop changes since the announcement. Have we noticed? Personally, I've noticed just a very slight handful of people looking for alternatives to Docker desktop, but the majority don't seem to be, scared off. I don't know if you all get, a different sense or a different viewpoint.
I think that's mostly true. Obviously, there's a lot of discussion when the announcement drops, and I think it will kind of taper off. I imagine we'll get another wave when the grace period actually ends in January, or coming around that time when they actually have to do, by they, I mean people and whatever their work computer or whatever actually has to evaluate and do something about it. But I imagine it's just like a stressful moment, and then they're like, I'll deal with this later. Yeah.
Cool. So I didn't know like what the grace period was exactly. You're saying
January 31st, it is the kind of end of the grace period, even though I guess the policy has changed effective immediately, but they are basically giving people until then. Obviously, like I think they've even said in their announcement, like they are not going to, I think, like actively try to, validate some of that stuff, but in theory, you are violating like legal terms. If you, like, for instance, if you wanted to work on, like they said, I don't know how much of the fact you read, but like you, even if all you're doing is working on Pack as part of VMware, like you would, your VMware would have to pay the like Docker desktop service agreement change because you work at a company that obviously employs more than 250 people and generates more than whatever the minimum revenue thing by a large amount, right? So, so like even though if you work full time in open source, you do not fall under the like free Docker desktop clause.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, there was an explicit one about like, what if I work at one of those companies, but I work full time in open source, and they said basically cool story, bro. The company can afford it.
It's
I
fun
mean,
that they were that explicit. Yeah,
yeah, no, it's good that they're explicit, but yeah.
interesting.
So I think it may impact more people than we think. I think a lot of the folks we interact with, at least from the Buildpacks Slack, probably fall under that bucket, I imagine.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you're doing pack stuff on your free time, that does not apply, right?
Yeah, that's like 100% of the time. Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, so another two tidbits that I've gathered thus far is one, I forget the individual's name, but I think it's a maintainer of Podman. They've been working really closely with us in trying to get the support even more integrated. I think we're looking at SSH. What is it? SSH Docker host? Yeah, support. But one of the things that I'm also capturing is that there's a lot of nuances to Docker Desktop versus Podman, and one of those being volumes. Like volumes don't work.
It's not as much Podman, right? It's more of like QEMU.
Yeah, virtualization aspect where Docker Desktop does a lot for you, and now they're having to essentially re-implement that sort of facade. And so I think that's, I don't know, I think that's problematic, and hopefully we get in front of it. And by we, I really do mean more like
Podman.
Podman.
We as the industry.
Yeah, right? Exactly.
For those things, when they talk about that, do you know if that is Mac OS X specific? Because I think their QEMU thing is OS X only, right? And like for Windows, the assumption is you have WSL too. WSL.
Yeah, that's a good point. I haven't really looked at the specifics, so I wouldn't know.
We've done some research because we also depend on Docker, because we depend on Pack for some of our local Salesforce functions stuff. And so at least from the research that we've done, and I think Sam can corroborate a lot of it too, it's just like, yeah, I mean, I think the one thing that was really nice about Docker Desktop was that it was a single solution across both OS X and Windows. And I think the solutions today that you're looking at that are alternatives are like either one or the other. And I think for the other, for Windows, is like almost everyone expects you to install Docker engine on WSL somewhere.
Yeah. And the Docker engine, that's not affected by the new license agreement, right? Because it's just the desktop aspect.
Yeah, just the desktop stuff. So I think for a lot of people, that's the virtualization and maybe the bundled in Gate stuff or something like that. But
yeah, from what I can tell, the desktop aspect of it gives you a lot of networking and volumes, right? And so those two things are, I don't know, pretty important when you're thinking about a solution like that.
Yeah. I know stuff will break down to even on WSL for like because this is true on Linux for me. It's just like the VPN stuff is pretty wonky. You have to pass like the -- network host flag, or else it kind of doesn't work. But I think with Docker Desktop, it's pretty seamless. Like you don't need to pass those flags.
What was that competing Docker alternative back in the day, like Rocket or something like that? Is that?
Oh, wasn't that was just container runtime though, right? Like, are you talking about like, yeah, you're just talking about the container runtime, right?
I think so, maybe. I don't remember. I just remember there was a little bit more competition with Docker. And now at this point, I'm like, I wish that competition was still around.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So I think enough of that. It sounds like we have some leeway and we should just continue to make some sort of efforts. I know in the learning team, we've been talking about essentially just making it known that Docker daemon or the Docker desktop is really just one of the possible backends, and we're trying to promote maybe Podman a little bit more, but we're waiting for slightly better support.
Does that change any of our like I guess it doesn't really, because all of our CI stuff is done on Linux. So but like I was wondering, do we need to do tests against Podman when, I mean, obviously like it is still a thing that in theory should work, and I know we've done changes to support them better, but I wonder with some of the Docker desktop stuff if we need to just roll that in the tests, like CI test suite or something.
Yeah, I wouldn't be opposed to it. Just to elaborate on that a little bit more, we do run them on Linux, but we also run them on Mac. But I think we don't do the desktop portion or the Docker portion in Mac, but definitely on Windows we do, right? So on Windows we do run Docker desktop, and so that's going to be interesting as well.
I think the project probably falls under the free license, maybe. I don't know. Or maybe that's whoever we're using as a vendor's problem.
Right. When someone tells us that we should be looking at something different, then I think at least the Windows one, I guess maybe those aren't as important, right? I feel like Windows people are going to come at me now. But,
well, I mean, I feel like I don't know how much it is for Buildpacks, but I know Windows is having still a large target audience for like our customer base. So they will be coming at us. We'll just send them to you.
There you go. Yeah. Tell them to make a pull request. We'll accept it.
Yeah. I mean, I imagine Windows will probably be very affected by a lot of these changes. I don't really know what answer. I think this will look very different a year from now or whatever, like 2 years from now.
Cool. And then the only other thing in relation to this that I could think of is I know we had an ongoing effort for BuildKit, like a proof of concept. I wonder if that should change, that sort of like strategy, or if we should continue it.
What is the story with BuildKit and like using it not on Docker? Like I know it's the thing behind like the lower level language that is used by the Docker engine. But does that mean I can't use a BuildKit thing on Podman?
Yes, that is very much true. Podman would not support BuildKit unless that's how they implemented it. But BuildKit is underlying and it's Linux native, right? So it runs inside of the VM essentially, if you're thinking like a Docker Docker desktop scenario. So it's running, so you could run it as a standalone thing in Linux, but it doesn't necessarily work on Mac standalone. And yeah, I guess for me, with this in mind and maybe thinking that it's possible that the user share, the market share of Docker drops because people will look for alternatives, whether it be Podman or something else. I do wonder whether or not it's as important as it was earlier this year.
Yeah, I know it's a good question. So Podman build supports Dockerfile, yes?
Yes. Yeah.
But not BuildKit.
Yeah, correct. Well, yeah, I'm trying to, because basically BuildKit supports Dockerfile as well, right? It's right. Like BuildKit has that sort of interoperability.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, like, I don't know all the relationships in my head. I just know, like, kind of on the surface what a thing does, but is it like kind of the like Java vendor situation? Like in theory, you can run this thing, but the implementation underneath of like Open JDK versus like Oracle JDK versus like IBM's JDK is different, but in theory, the Java code should be the same. Is that the same for Dockerfile? Like Podman has their actual own implementation and does not just use a reference implementation.
Right. So I don't know what Podman is using. For instance, like Podman could be using Conoco, right? Or it could literally be using BuildKit, and we just don't know, right? And so I think maybe that's just part of investigating.
I mean, I think that the potential with BuildKit was that, for example, in the inner loop stuff, if you're using VS Code, that thing it's integrated already with the IDE, right? So I have the VS Code, I have the BuildKit behind it, and then there are some cool features for developer putting those two things together, right? So we were trying to, okay, let's put, instead of building the source code with a Docker file, you're going to be able to build it with our tool. And so we have like the VS Code build the BuildKit here, and then we have Buildpacks, right? More or less, it's where all the potential for integrating with BuildKit is helping at least that. That's I'm not sure. It's also BuildKit affected with this, you know, changing in the agreements and the license and whatever Docker guys are doing, or it could be just a tool, you know, like the engine, right? Like you can use it if you want, and you don't have to pay for it. I'm not sure.
I'm pretty sure it would be the latter, where BuildKit is unaffected as an open source project.
Okay.
And it's really just the desktop GUI that's
okay.
licensed differently.
I mean, if I think in that way, then not sure. Yeah, we can double check if, you know, the ideas we had at the beginning of the year doing this, it can change something or not. But if I think that that tool is going to be still, you know, open and everybody can use it, I mean, from my perspective, we were trying to reach that use cases, right? Developer wants to run inside this inner loop stuff, and we want to tell the developer, yes, if you want to build your code, you can use Buildpack instead of the Docker file, right? We can help you with that, and we can integrate with this thing, and this thing already have ecosystem of tools that you can use, and you are happy using it. So keep using them, but just build the code with us, not with the Docker file.
So yeah, if I remember correctly, the idea is that by us having the BuildKit support inside of essentially the Docker daemon or Docker desktop, was that it would be a more cohesive experience where they don't have to install, let's say, like Pack or have Kpack or anything like that, and they would just say, you know, build, and it would just magically say, okay, well, this is a what is it called? This has a project TOML or a Docker file that basically has a different annotation. And so therefore it would use Cloud Native Buildpacks behind the scene, right? So I think that was from a user's perspective, end user's perspective, that was the nicety there. Now, as I was thinking through some of this, of whether or not BuildKit is still a priority, I think certain parts are still a priority. Maybe not directly related to BuildKit, but the idea of OCI layout support for lifecycle, that's like super important, right? Yeah, for both us, the platform team, and the implementation team. Like, yeah.
Yes, that's a feature I'm still working, but it's a pretty good one because opened the door to do different things for different platforms with that image on the file system in the OCI format. We can do different things with it. Whatever they want, you can do it, right? You have the image instead of the image in the registry. Here it is, and it's in this format, and you can, you know, do whatever you want with it. So yeah, that's that feature. I'm still working on it. I'm doing some tests, and but I'm moving forward. But yes, that one I believe is not affected by this stuff because it's something we will add it and into the features of lifecycle. Not sure if we want. I'm working on also on pack, right, with the flag on pack, and if you run it with pack, and then here it is in the image and the file system. Not sure if it's useful, but it's more it's more easy to test the code having someone that it's calling the life cycle and doing the job for me. So yeah, that's it.
If we get that feature for free, we'll take it. I only say that because I know that you can use, is it Scopio or something like that, where basically then it could take file system OCI layout format and actually throw it up into different registries or different artifacts and stuff like that. Scopio is a pretty good manipulator or mover of images in different formats. So I think, again, to your point, people could do whatever they want with it at that point, right?
Yeah.
Saying like it has to be in a registry or it has to be in a Dr. Daemon. It just kind of gives a further escape hatch into what they want to do with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. So again, we'll take it if you're building it already.
Yeah.
So it looks like you can use BuildKit with Podman, but it's not like out of the box. Like you need to basically set up the BuildKit daemon and basically point it to the Podman URI versus the Docker one under the hood from what it looks like. And then just Googling really quickly from an article a few days ago, like Podman, I think will do a build, but does not support all of the features from BuildKit. So some things like caching don't work according to that article. Obviously, it's not necessary, but probably nice. So there's probably some gotchas and things, but I guess it is good that the BuildKit repo has a reference to Podman of like how to make this work with Podman, but it will be it does look like it is not a thing that's just out of the box. Like people will have to basically run the daemon and repoint it.
Cool. I'm adding the notes real quick.
Yeah, I think those are mostly good signs. Yeah, I mean, obviously don't know what the plans or long-term stuff is with all these things, but
crazy times. I honestly did not see this one coming. So
I don't think anyone saw it coming except Docker. So
like we need to make more money. All right. Fine.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. So anything else? I think we're at the halfway point.
I had not like a probably in-depth topic, but a thing that came up from just working with folks on my side of the fence. We were debugging. They're just like trying to get up and started and running and going through the Buildpack author tutorial with Pack. And one things that kind of came up was the program they had was basically like throwing an exception for both build and detect, but until we replaced detect with like just a very simple bash thing that wasn't throwing an exception, we could see that since it's like it does like the lifecycle thing where it's the same binary that's kind of similar to whatever for both detect and build, like we couldn't see the exception by default when we just ran pack build from the detect phase. Is that a platform level thing? Because I know we have like hard coded in the spec, right? Like 0 and 100 explicitly for fail and success. I wonder like if exceptions or things are coming out that are not things in the spec, if we could raise those by default. Or
Oh, I see. So instead of having to pass in like the verbose flag or whatnot.
yeah, like you can definitely see it with verbose, but I think for at least for that person getting started, it was definitely not intuitive that you needed to do that. Like I guess to them it just looked like their detect was failing, right? It is written in spec, right, that only like 0 and 100 are the error codes that you're supposed to.
I know Natalie did some work on that. I don't know if it was on the spec itself, but I do remember in the docs.
For detect phase, but I wonder if there's a way that is spec compliant where if there are error codes that are unexpected or something that PAC could potentially raise them without the verbose flag. I don't know, just a topic discussion.
So what, is there a reason why we wouldn't want to just promote any error that occurs?
Well, so I think like explicit error code, like I'm pretty sure it's like, oh, I'm pretty sure it's 100. Yeah, so basically, yeah, here it is. I can.
When I share your screen.
Yeah, show my screen. Found it. This, like, make sure I share the right window. Here we go. It says here for detection, pass is 0, obviously. Fail is 100. And basically anything else that is not 100 or 0 is like a thing that is unexpected, right? And I'm wondering if like anything falls under this bucket, if we could basically raise or display something there for PAC.
Okay, I mean, that sounds more than reasonable to me. I know that there was an issue a while back about having more user-friendly error messages. And I'm not sure that I want to completely increase the scope on what you're saying or your request, but I do wonder if there's some sort of like overlap.
Yeah, I guess what did you have in mind for user friendly? Because I guess in this case, this is like not a user error in the sense like as an application builder, this is a probably I'm a Buildpack author, or maybe I am an application developer and I'm using Buildpack that is like blowing up. But like it looks like to me the Buildpack, I feel like in that case where you're in the non-0 100, it looks like the Buildpack is performing normally, but it's clearly not because it's like not raising one of the 2 error codes that are expected, right?
Right.
And I think that's like where the confusing thing is. It's like it tells me that no Buildpack groups successfully detected, which is 100% true, but it doesn't. It looks like it just the Buildpack failed normally.
Right.
And I guess when you're talking about user-friendly error messages, what do you mean? What do you mean by that?
So I posted the link on there, and it was more or less that, again, this is a more holistic idea, but that there's other, software, I believe like things like NPM or Firebase, where when an error occurs, they kind of give you guidance in a lot of cases where they say, oh, this was most likely because something like this happened. And here's a link to documentation around this sort of error that occurs, right? So again, I don't know exactly how it ties into this particularly, but it's, again, kind of the idea of better error messaging.
I see. Gotcha. Yeah, I think this makes sense. But I feel like some of the maybe differences from at least like pack create build and other things is like these are probably coming from pack or the platform of like here's the thing we can document or link to, and that not that it doesn't apply to the thing I suggested, but the thing I suggested I feel like is more of a like this is a problem with your build pack or one of the build packs you're using. And so we can definitely error and have messaging around that that's better in the sense that we could link to a thing like that describes like, oh, this means you have a problem, right? Like this is where I think it would fit into kind of this broader thing. But I do think this is more encompassing of like, oh, you as a user doing something wrong, where in the case of, I feel like this other thing, it's like the Buildpack is doing something wrong, which may or may not be you, right?
Right.
Depending on who that person is, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And again, I think as the more I think about it, it's also about how easy it is to implement, the complexity involved. So for the one that you're referring to, it should be extremely easy, right? It could be like a good first issue. Just if it's one of these exit codes, just print out the standard out or standard error, I believe.
Yeah.
And then for the one that I proposed or I linked, it would be more like maybe a mentorship program type issue, right? Where we kind of detail exactly, we have somebody go through and see, okay, these are all the errors that could happen. Let's create documentation associated with those errors and then find a way to essentially link them, right? Or provide things to those. So it seems like a much bigger scope.
Yeah.
So cool. Do you want to create the issue for that? And then
Yep.
it's probably just get the good first issue label on that.
Yep.
Get it.
Yeah, I can definitely do that. Cool. Yeah, that's all I had. Wasn't a big thing, but definitely was a just user experience thing that I think will save a lot of, I think, new Buildpack authors time when they're, and probably actually old Buildpack author. I feel like that's it's really annoying to debug and detect things. I feel like when it doesn't look anything's going wrong.
Yeah, I don't think I've taken that much time to build build packs other than the sample build packs. I feel like I should do.
Yeah, it turns out those work. So
there you go.
You got that going for you.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like I should do something like Joe did and like do something very
Buildpack a day for like a month.
Yeah, exactly. Find something. I don't know. He did the Minecraft one, right?
Yeah.
But I realized because I try to use it. He did the older version, the Java version of Minecraft server,
Yeah.
the newer version. And so I was like, man, maybe I should create the newer version of that.
Is that just a portable executable you can just run anywhere? I guess I know nothing because they moved off of Java, right? So
yeah, they moved off of Java. I don't remember exactly how it was set up. Eventually, it was actually really difficult, and I just paid $3 a month for some like.
Yeah, exactly right.
Anyway, enough of my banter. All right. Anything else for this meeting?
Not for me.
Not for me neither.
Then I guess let's go ahead and call it. Everybody have an awesome week.
Cool.
See you all.
Bye.
So.